welcome to this week's episode of the DW podcast. I am joined by Shawn Francis, who is one of the founders of Asbury Park Football Club. So, Shawn, thanks so much for giving me your time today.
No problem, Derek. No problem.
If you want to start off, for those who maybe haven't heard of APFC and yourself, maybe just give us a bit of background on you and a bit about the football club or soccer club, as you would say over in the States.
Yeah. Uh, yeah, APFC is the biggest club you've never heard of. It's what we like to say about ourselves. Been doing it in real life around 5 years now, but we kind of claim this long and storied history that doesn't exist. The idea about it really is just sort of, a football club that's actually for modern football. You hear all these things, people say, oh, they're against modern football, all these supporters, and we're like, well, what if we actually say we're for modern football, just to be contrary and just to be a little punk rock maybe. But we basically like, oh, let's have a club that does all the things that a modern football club does, right? We've got merchandise, we've got supporters, we've got endorsement deals and sponsors, and that we just don't actually play any games.
I think that's what's amazing about it. It's so unique. And the first time I heard about it was I was actually reading. Obviously, I'm a big music fan and also a football fan myself. So I've seen the names spattered about with some bands wearing the merch and things like that. But the first time I proper read about it was in the New York Times. And I was thinking, what is going on here? This is a football team that doesn't play football.
Well, you know what, man? Guess what? Every club in the world right now is Asbury Park FC. I mean, I think everyone right now is like, I think what's going on with this coronavirus is kind of testing our original concept. Our original idea was like, can we do this without actually playing it? Will people pay attention? Will people follow it? Part of the inspiration was my son. My son was like probably about 9 years old. And unfortunately, he loves Chelsea.
Okay. I won't judge him on that one, Shawn. I won't judge him.
Well, I'm a Fulham man, so I will judge him on that. I love him, but I will judge him on it. But Chelsea's his team, and he has the Chelsea jersey, the Chelsea bed sheets, Chelsea posters on the wall. That's his thing. But when I tell you, he only watches maybe 3 full Chelsea games a year. Like younger, and I think it's partly a generational thing, but the younger kids, they follow football more than they watch football. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So he's got 6 different apps on his phone that tell him, the scores and what the transfer rumors are and who the new coach is. And he tells me what's going on half the time before I know. But it's interesting. They don't sit and watch full matches. They watch all the highlights on YouTube and all that. But so that was a little bit of the inspiration. And I was like, oh, well, can we stretch this into a real thing where, people want to keep up with what's going on with this club, even though there's no games. And, from my point of view, it's worked. And now what's interesting, for the past 2 months, we've seen it at a global scale. We've seen, big clubs like PSG, just basically putting anything on their Twitter and Facebook and Instagram accounts but games. It's everything from, oh, buy this merch, to here's some highlights from, a cup final from 10 years ago. Here's an interview with this club legend. Here's, it's anything but actual football. So it's fascinating. I think everyone's we were pioneers, Derek. We were pioneers.
I think it's amazing. I was fascinated when I first read it, and taking it back to its roots, as you said, it's almost 5, or you would say 5 years, but on the badge, and so it would say that you were established in 2014.
Oh, yeah, so it's 6 years now, yeah.
6 years. What were those early days like when you first ran the idea? Because it's yourself and one of your friends, I believe, that started it.
Yeah. My buddy Ian Perkins, he's a great guy, Englishman. Was at the time living in New Jersey, stranded at the Jersey Shore in the middle of a winter where nothing goes on here. It's like, it would be like, if you lived in some coastal Scots town, I don't know, if you lived in Ayr and it's, January, there's nothing going on there. It's just cold, it's gray, it's wet, there's nothing going on. And we were sitting down in my house in the basement watching some football match on TV. I don't know what it was. And we're like, oh man, I just want to go out and play. I want to go play. I'm like, yeah, we should do that. And we're like, it's too cold. Yeah. We're too old. Yeah. Someone will get hurt. Yeah. We're like, what if we start a team and we just didn't actually play? We're like, oh, we kind of laughed to ourselves, and we both locked eyes and we're like, oh, that's brilliant. That just might work, So one of the first things we did was like, just started looking at like what are those things that football fans really react to? And like my day job is in marketing. I do social media for a bunch of brands. I've Nike, Heineken. I work for Major League Soccer. I used to run all their social media for the league. Like it's what I
Brilliant.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
what I do. So I started looking at what are those things fans react to, and the first thing I went to was stadium plans. Anytime a club puts out a new rendering, like, oh, we're proposed this new stadium, and they put out the renderings of what it looks like. All the fans, spend a whole day on Instagram or Twitter just debating it and da 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 da. So I found this guy online through this website, and I think he was in Sri Lanka. I want to say he paid him like $50, and he was like an architecture student. And he made these renderings of a stadium on top of this old building that's on the beach in Asbury Park. That's like a very legendary building. Every band's played there. Springsteen, The Clash, everyone.
Yeah.
And we put it out, and we just put it out in a very matter of fact way that you kind of looked at it and were like, is this real? Is this not real? Like you couldn't really tell. And it
It
took
creates
off.
that buzz, doesn't it? It creates that interest there where people are thinking, "What's going on? This is exciting."
Yeah, yeah. It was really fun, and it kind of took off to the point where at one point, like this guy Stephen Goff, who's like a big football writer here in the States, who writes for the Washington Post. Like he put it on his blog on the website on Washington Post, and I think it took about an hour before someone realized it was a load of crap. They took it down.
No way.
Yeah, but yeah, that's fun. We like to have fun with the joke.
And I suppose for yourselves and also for the community that's really bought into it, as you mentioned earlier, I think maybe before we came on air, Ashbury Park is a beach town, a coastal town. It's really synonymous for me, certainly with Springsteen, as you mentioned, and also a really thriving music scene. And you guys seem to have totally captured that music scene and brought the sport and music together for this project.
Yeah, my background, yeah, is sport. Like I said, I've done social media for over a decade now. Didn't intend to. I just kind of happened into it. But like I said, done it for a lot of football brands and things like that. Before that, I was in the music industry. I worked at MTV for a long time. Worked for a bunch of record labels. I've been a DJ for 20 years, so it's definitely something that's in my blood. And then Ian, who I started doing this with, he is a guitar player. He plays. He did. He was touring guitar player for Gaslight Anthem, and then
Brilliant.
yeah, and then he also plays with Brian Fallon, the singer for Gaslight Anthem, on his solo things. And then
Sure.
Ian does his own music as well. So yeah, it's just not. It was just kind of this natural thing for us. Just because he's a big football fan into music. I'm a big football fan into music. We just kind of combined our loves. And the cool thing about both of us having that background is I know a lot of players from my time working for Major League Soccer. I spent, a year of World Cup qualifying, traveling with the U.S. Men's team. So I know a lot of those players. I know a lot of musicians. Ian obviously knows a ton of musicians because he's on the road 8 months out of the year, playing Reading Festival and everything else. So he just, between the two of us, we're able to kind of put the shirts on a bunch of different footballers, put it on a bunch of different rock stars, and kind of create this weird, like, what is this? A bit of intrigue and mystery around it.
It must have been really interesting for you when you are running the social accounts, and you see these questions coming in from people that start following you on Instagram or Twitter and thinking, what is this? I've seen my favourite musician or, one of my favourite soccer players or football players wearing this jersey. Like, do they support this team? Is this a real team? Like, how were you as coming back to people and saying this is what Asbury Park FC was? Or did you like that there was a bit of a mystery around it? Is that part of the endearing, intriguing part that makes you special?
Yeah, at first we were very vague about it. You know what I mean? We would answer, people would reach out to us on social media, on Twitter or Instagram or whatever, and we'd be very vague in our responses. So it was never a yes, never a no kind of thing. We just left people guessing, so to speak. But after a while, probably about 9 months, year into it, you can only do that for a certain amount of time. And then we sort of kind of like, oh, we start letting people in, and we let people realize it, but we never verbally confirm it, you know. Um, and it was cool. And then the 20, I guess it'd be 2016 U.S. elections happened, and the advent of fake news becoming a top line talking point in American politics. And at that point, we kind of like, oh, okay, we need to pull back on some of the things we were doing. Like we were doing a lot of fake press releases and things like that, and we kind of toned that down because we didn't want to be seen as part of that problem or sort of making light of this very uh, serious situation.
Sure.
Um, so we kind of pulled back, and then we kind of got a little bit more open about the open secret, you know. But
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. It's funny, you know. We everyone now pretty much knows it's fake. Like when some people discover it and they're like, "What in the hell is this?"
Yeah.
And then after that, you know, they have probably maybe 15 minutes of thinking, "Is this real? Is it not real?" But you know, if you spend 15 minutes looking at it, you'll figure out, okay, this is clearly a joke. You know.
And I know that you've obviously got bands that sponsor the front of the jerseys. For example, I noticed the
Mm.
Bouncing Souls one. That I'm a huge fan of them, and I thought I really
Oh
want
yeah.
to get my hand on that. And I think it was gone as soon as it went on sale, to be honest. But I've also seen, you've had the scarves. It's like you'd see these half and half scarves at games, which again ties back to that very modern football type thing. And you'll get fans moaning that I don't want a Man United and a Man City scarf. That's ridiculous. But I seen that you guys had like a Bad Religion v Asbury Park thing.
Yeah.
So it's almost like, to people looking in from the outside, these games are taking place, but what do you mean Bad Religion are playing against Asbury Park? And what do you mean the Bouncing Souls are sponsoring a football team? How do you go about selecting which bands you get involved? Is that through friends? And
Yeah, it's all just our network, you know. We're lucky, like I say, in Asbury, we have a really, it's a town that's known for music, you know.
yeah,
Even through Asbury Park had a lot of ups and downs in the early part, early part of the 20th century, even I mean going from the 1800s to the 1950s, Asbury Park was a place you took your family for a good, working class holiday, you know.
yeah,
Um, and at first it was very like in the Victorian era, it was very bourgeois. It was very like if you had money and you lived in New York or Philadelphia, you would take a steamship down the coast to Asbury
really,
Park, and you'd walk the boardwalk and the promenade with your parasol and your white dress and all that. But like I say, 30s, 40s, 50s, it became like a real working class holiday place with a lot of amusement parks and things. Almost like like in England, like a Blackpool or a
yeah. It's like a
Brighton.
Blackpool or a Scarborough or somewhere, isn't it? Or a
Yeah,
Brighton.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, totally, totally. But then in the 60s, like a lot of America, there are, really, really intense race riots. And they, I think probably a third of the town was burned to the ground. And, the middle class just left. And you had a good 40 years, from the 60s to like the early 2000s where it was really, really rough, really a hellhole,
yeah,
just it was really bad. But now it's on the up and up, there's a lot of people reinvesting and a lot of people buying property and new businesses and things like that. It's healthier than it's been in a while, in a very long time. But even through all those rough patches, music was always a thing. So even in the 70s and 80s, when there were tumbleweeds going down the beach, and you could get stabbed pretty easily. You
sure.
always had clubs like the Stone Pony and the Saint and the Wonder Bar and the Fast Lane. All these great live music venues, and that's kind of what it's just in the DNA of this town. And think of every band from New Jersey. Doesn't matter if you go back to Bruce Springsteen in the '70s to Bon Jovi in the '80s, and you fast forward to the 2000s and Gaslight Anthem, My Chemical Romance, Bouncing Souls.
Yeah,
All those bands cut their teeth in Asbury Park. All those bands played here. So it's kind of this de facto hometown for rock music in the state of New Jersey. And we're lucky enough that a lot of those guys still live around here. So we're able to call up the Bouncing Souls and say, "Hey, you got a show coming up? We have an idea for something cool." And they're
that's
always
really
like,
cool.
"Yeah, let's do it." The Bad Religion scarf came about because one of those guys in Bad Religion ended up marrying a girl from the next town over, Neptune City,
Right.
So we're
Well,
mates with.
it's funny you mentioned that because I wanted to ask you about that because I noticed that you've kind of created a little rivalry with Neptune City.
Yeah, everybody needs a villain. Celtic need Rangers, Hearts needs
Exactly.
Hibs.
That's it.
Everybody needs a villain. So yeah, we created Neptune City, and kind of, again, the great thing about football is there's always something to poke fun at. You know what I mean? Like, there's always something to poke fun at, and the state of modern football. Nothing is more modern football than the City Football Group. With Man
Yeah.
City, NYCFC, Melbourne City in Australia. They've now got a club in Korea, or no, Japan. They've got a club there as well. There's nothing more modern football than this sort of franchise football that they have. So we're like, oh, well, we'll make Neptune City, and we'll do it with the exact same sort of powder blue jerseys. The sponsor is, instead of Etihad Airlines, we have one called All I Had Airways, which is it's like a budget carrier. It's more like an EasyJet than the Emirates.
Yeah.
And the badge rips them off and everything. Yeah, it's the great thing about football. It's such a fertile ground for things to make fun of. It's so ridiculous. Like, the entire concept and business of what's turned into soccer is just ridiculous now. So
I find it interesting as well because obviously we're in Scotland here, and I think there's almost a bit of, I don't know the right word for it, but it's almost as if Scottish football is not quite as commercialised as of yet as you would say to England or the Bundesliga in Germany or even La Liga in Spain. And I think we almost see ourselves as, oh, we really hope we don't go down that modern football route. So, for example, I'm a Motherwell fan, and we're a fan-owned club at the moment, playing in the Premier League, and we kind of pride ourselves on the fact that we're still owned by the fans. We've not bought into this commercialisation of the game, but on the other side of that, there is only so far that you can take that. And the States, I think, is the perfect example of how football's grown. And they've kind of taken this modern football culture, but they've made it great. I think you look at teams like in LA, and obviously it didn't work at first with the Galaxy as well. But you've got the new team out there. Is it LAFC? Is that right?
yeah, yeah.
And it seems like they've really made their own culture and made it their own. And the MLS is growing in a pace that most leagues could never keep up with.
No, absolutely not. And it's pretty fascinating because the model here is something that kind of only works it's unique to America. You know what I mean? Like, uh, you could never just grow a Premiership team in Scotland or England or Germany out of thin air. You gotta buy that club in the fourth division, and to
Yeah,
keep it modern football. What, like, Red Bull's done in Germany, right? They buy a team in the fourth division, and 4 years later they're in the Champions League.
yeah, crazy.
But you couldn't start at the top,
Yeah,
from scratch. You could not start at the top, and that's something uniquely American. And the interesting thing is, you have a lot of people who are football fans in America who are like, oh, they really want promotion and relegation. But the reality is, MLS is still growing. It's still expanding because America's a massive country. You
yeah,
can't have a 20-team league here. Every sports league, whether it's basketball, hockey, football, whatever, American football, they're all 32 to 35 teams or 36 teams, something like that. So MLS has still got room to grow, but you can't go to a billionaire. You can't go to Bill Gates. You can't go to Mark Cuban. You can't go to any of these guys and say, "Hey, we want you to invest in this sport. Give us $500 million to build a stadium, to build a roster, and to pay your franchise fee." But here's the thing. Here's the catch. If you have a crap year,
you're out.
you're out. Yeah, for year one. So give us $500 million, and if your team is crap, which most expansion teams in almost every sport are, you're out. You're playing in the minor leagues, and you can't do that. You know what I mean? Like, there's not one investor in America that's going to go, you no, no,
Yeah,
get out of my office.
yeah,
Yeah, but the other part of that is, because you don't have that risk as a potential investor, they've been able to, especially in the last 10 years, they've added 12 teams, I believe,
yeah.
if I get it right.
I
Yeah.
think you're right. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, so it's they're able to move at this pace, and the interesting thing is all the newer clubs are a much bigger deal for the most part than the original clubs. You know,
Yeah.
the original
What do you
club.
put that down to, Sean? Do you think that's they maybe got it wrong the first time and didn't get like I read a book actually on a podcast with the author for it, 1312, Among the Ultras, it's called, James Montague, who writes for The Guardian and
Mhm,
other publications over here. But he went out to the States and he says, if you look at the ultra culture or fan culture, so to speak, a lot of the time people look at America and think, it's really plastic and it's, because it doesn't have the violent aspects or whatever else. But
mhm.
the reason I go back to LAFC again is he talks in detail about that, is how the Galaxy was kind of out of town when they first built up. Stadium wasn't really in the best location. Then you take this LAFC, who's primarily, from quite a working class neighbourhood where they've got a lot of people with Hispanic roots or from South America, and who really got football, and they've always had, a soccer team to follow, but not had one on their doorstep. And it took off more than the way that the Galaxy has, because it seems like it was maybe a bit more thought through.
You know what? The thing is, when MLS started in '96, they didn't have a pot to piss in. You know, there was no money. We just had the '94 World Cup here in the States, and that was, by far the biggest moment in the game in this country in 15 years. The last time anyone paid attention to soccer in this country was probably 1979 when Pele retired with the New York Cosmos. Um,
That's right. Yeah, he came over
yeah,
for his exhibition year almost, wasn't it?
yeah, he was there for 3 seasons, and he brought. I mean, the Cosmos were massive. The Cosmos were drawing 75,000 people to Giant Stadium. The Cosmos,
Yeah,
the New York Cosmos were the blueprint for modern football, right? They were the
yeah,
first rock star football team. If you think about the 1970s, if you were a club in Scotland, 80% of your roster was Scottish boys.
Scottish. Yeah,
You might,
yeah,
yeah, you might have a couple of guys from Northern Ireland. You might have a couple of guys from Ireland. You might have a couple of guys from English, but by and large, there was Scottish. Same thing. If you had a German club, you might have two or three Austrians there, but it was largely
yeah,
German players. And until the New York Cosmos came and they brought in Pele and Roberto Carlos from Brazil, they had Franz Beckenbauer from Germany, they had Giorgio Chinaglia, the Italian, come over from Napoli. They were like that first club to like bring, right, we're going to go get the best guys from all these
yeah.
countries and put them
It's just
together. And
never heard of before that, was it? It was like, what's going on? This
yeah,
is really
yeah,
new.
yeah. It was. I mean, it was mind blowing, and they came at it. The owner was a gentleman named Steve Ross, who was a big record executive. Who's partnered with the Erdogan brothers, Ahmet Erdogan, who they discovered Led Zeppelin. There were all these like rock and roll music types. So they bought this club, put it in New York City, the epicenter of the world at the peak of the disco era.
Yeah,
Fascinating. Like they literally were the world's first super club. But by the time MLS came around, that was a very, very, very distant memory. And so the first, 15 years of MLS were really a struggle. It was really just trying to keep the lights on. They're trying to keep the costs low because what killed the NASL, which is the league the Cosmos were in, was what killed them was the Cosmos. The Cosmos went out and spent all this crazy money, and every other team tried to keep up with them, and they didn't have, you know, there's only one Pele, right?
yeah.
Every team wants to go out and get
Can't
their own
compete with that.
Pele. Yeah,
Uh,
and then you had a lot of clubs, people putting teams in cities that had no history, no connection, no knowledge of soccer. You had teams in places like Tulsa, Oklahoma, and Las Vegas, Nevada. There's a team in Las Vegas that signed Eusebio, the
really? Right.
Portuguese great. Yeah, and
Yeah.
Eusebio came and played for 2 years in America, and he was supposed to be there. He's going to be our Pele in Las Vegas, and no one knows who Eusebio is in Las Vegas, Nevada.
Yeah.
Pele
It
was
looks
missing.
interesting. Yeah.
And yeah, so it's they spent all this money to get these players that no one was going to pay to come see. So MLS really tried to go in the opposite direction of that and really tried to limit spending. So for the first 10, 15 years, it was largely American college players made up the sort of real bulk of the players. And you'd have the occasional Lothar Matthäus or Roberto Donadoni who would come over for 6 months to a year at age 37, and trot around. But until Beckham came, that was really like the spark, and
Yeah.
uh, he changed, the way the contracts and things were structured so that you could actually pay some people real money to come over and play. but he also got the sponsors. He brought enough attention to the league that sponsors really started paying attention, and you
Yeah.
could, they got this 10-year deal with Adidas to kit out the whole team, the whole league, for a boatload of money, and you've got sponsors now like Coca-Cola and Heineken and Audi, all these really top tier sponsors.
Yeah.
You've got great TV deals with ESPN and Fox, which are both huge networks here in the States. And, the new teams, the thing is, the other thing is the stadiums too. You alluded to with Galaxy. MLS had no leverage and had no cachet. No one was really trying to give them money. So if they were able to build a stadium anywhere, if anyone was like, oh yeah, you can build here, they would go, because
Yeah.
not many people would offer. So they ended up, the first generation of stadiums that the league played in were all these oversized NFL stadiums. And they realized, okay, this isn't going to work. It looks bad because there's only 20,000 people in a 90,000 seat stadium.
Yeah.
We're paying rent to be in these stadiums, so it doesn't make financial sense. So they started to build their own stadiums. The only people that would give them to them were in these weird, far-flung locations. So, these teams end up playing, an hour outside of town. Teams in Colorado, Chicago, Los Angeles, Dallas, they're all playing an hour away from the city. So you're not really getting, that.
Oh, there is those.
Yeah. So this new generation of clubs are, they've got all these things going for them. And one of the things they're going for them is they're actually building like LAFC. They're playing right downtown. Atlanta is playing right downtown. Seattle, Portland, they play right downtown. And you can see the difference, man. Those clubs that are really in the heart of the city where, nightlife and culture and youth are, where people go out, they do really well.
Even like the Timbers there, for example, it seems like it is like a real lifeblood of the community, doesn't it? And there seems to be like youth cultures and politics seem to be spilling into that there as well. And it seems to be almost in the MLS, and correct me if I'm wrong, and this is an outsider's view looking in, but it seems like a lot of these football clubs and fan groups really use that as a way to political expression, where they're maybe filling a field where there's no other kind of place for that, so they're taking it to the terraces and saying, I've seen lots of protests against Trump, and there was the almost like the not anti-fascist, but there was quite a lot of the flags along those lines in the stadiums, and the MLS were trying to ban them. And I thought it's really interesting to see that. It's almost a bit rebellious in nature.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely, and Portland being the strongest example. There's something about football culture in America that, in a lot of ways, for a long time, I mean, it's going quite mainstream now, but for a long time, soccer in America was that team sport for people who didn't like team sports.
Sure.
Like if you don't, if you're not going to an NFL game because you find the NFL culture too much chicken wings and light beer, like the stereotypes of American football fans, a lot of people, that wasn't for them. They were kind of punk rock. They were, into a little bit left of center things, a little bit more well-read, a little bit more into alternative music and things like that. They kind of gravitated towards soccer. And then you have a place like Portland. Portland is very interesting because, I mean, I'm sure there's books written about it. Actually, I know there's one, but Portland was that one club that they were around in the 70s during that NASL era, playing against the Cosmos and things like that. And that league folded in the early 80s. And then the Timbers became like a minor league team for 20 years. And the interesting thing is people kept going. They always had supporters, even before they were it was interesting. 2 years before they came into MLS, they were outdrawing like 3 or 4 teams in MLS. Just because like they've always, that was amazing. Like they were this minor league club and playing in a league that the average attendance was like 3,000 people a game, and they were drawing 12. But it's an interesting city because again, there's something in Portland. There's something in the roots of that city that are very kind of rebellious and very kind of left of center, very thinking, very politically charged. It's just that kind of town. And crucially, they only had one other professional sports team. They had a basketball team, which hasn't been good since the 90s.
Sure.
Yeah, so this soccer team just kind of became this weird, there's a culture around it, you know what I mean? Like a real culture of everything from, if you go to a basketball game, it's like Yeah, you go to the game night, you come home, you might see some of the highlights, watch a little Sports Center, and see the pundits talk about it. But there's no like, you don't go and get together with a bunch of friends to make banners. You don't start a charitable foundation to build basketball courts in underserved neighborhoods around town. The fans don't create their own merch lines that outsell the team, and that's the kind of thing that happens in Portland, because those are the kind of things that go on in football culture and even in America, where football is not the main sport and has to share the limelight. There's something there. This thing about activism, as opposed to, there are some supporters groups in America that refer to themselves as ultras, and it's kind of ridiculous. Like, honestly, I mean, I've been in a supporters group for many years in New York, and we like to go drink a couple of beers, sing a couple of inappropriate songs, cheer the team on. But it's not about trying to be Green Street hooligans or anything like that. Unfortunately,
Yeah,
there are some people in this country who've seen one too many movies and seem to think that's cool and want to.
totally.
It's like they're trying to create a culture that's not there.
Yeah,
All those factors that contributed to hooliganism in the 80s during like the Thatcher era, the unemployment and, the sort of general listlessness and unhappiness and nothing else to do and being on the dole and,
yeah.
having legions of young men with nothing else to do but get pissed drunk and start shit. Like, those
Yeah.
factors aren't here. So I don't know why you're trying to create it, but for whatever reason, we do have some people who think that's worth glorifying.
And like you said, these things didn't come out of nothing. There was that sense of, there's nothing else to do, and this is a sense of rebellion, like you mentioned, certainly in Motherwell, where we're from. I think a lot of the casual movement and the hooligan movement was built out of Thatcherism and the fact that they closed the steelworks here and a lot of people were unemployed, and it was a release for many people. And if you've not got that there, then it's very hard to build that culture. On the flip side, I feel that sometimes in British sport, we almost try to take an American culture that doesn't exist yet, and we can over commercialize things. But there's obviously many benefits to that as well. I think that I mean, if you look at the American culture in sport, not just in soccer but across the board, you've got these what do you call it, tailgate parties, for example, in advance, like where everyone's meeting up in the car park beforehand, hours before the game, and people are really buying into it. And I think that's maybe something that lacks in Britain. There's not the same build up to events as there is in the States, and that's maybe something that we could take on board and adapt.
Yeah, I mean, I like that. I mean, one thing I like about soccer in America is this hybrid thing. It's this real mutt culture, where we take this British game and we've kind of molded it to fit our country, both in ways that are good and bad. But you know, I love the fact that, like, I take my son to a game. It's an all day thing. You
And I
know,
think that's the way it should be, Sean. I really do.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, sports is entertainment, and it's funny in America. This is a very weird thing to say. I've said this 1,000 times over the years, and people look at me like I'm nuts. But sports is entertainment, man. On a Saturday afternoon, you know, you've worked all week, and what are you going to do with your Saturday to blow off steam? Are you going to go see a football match? Are you going to go to the cinema? Are you going to go to a concert? Are you going to go fishing? Whatever it is, right? Whatever you're going to do to entertain yourself. Sports is that. And a lot of people here seem to think that sports is a higher thing than that, especially the baseball people. The baseball fans think that, baseball is near a religion. I don't believe that. I'm not of that school of thought. I'm of the school of thought that sport is, just your choice of entertainment, the same as going to a concert is, and it's great. And there's a feeling there that you get that you might not be able to get anywhere else. But um, that sort of thing I love. I remember before I moved to New Jersey, I'm originally from Texas.
Okay.
I graduated university on a Saturday. By Tuesday, I'd moved to London, had no job, no place to live, was just kind of shacking up with a mate, and had like two backpacks in a suitcase. And I just moved over
Brilliant.
there and ended up getting a job and stayed over for about a year or whatever. And I was going to Fulham, and this was the 2001 season. It was the year they won promotion. They hadn't been in the
Cool.
Premiership since the 70s, and you know, blinding team. I mean, they won the first 11 games. And I'll never forget, usually the back pages of the papers in London, that Sunday paper, usually the back pages, you know, it's usually Arsenal, it's Tottenham, it's
Oh,
Fulham.
Chelsea, yeah.
Yeah, Chelsea. It's always Man United. It's always one of the big clubs. And I remember, the season starts and, people, you go down and have breakfast. Oh, all right, Fulham doing all right in the season. Yeah, they won, 7, 8 games. By the time they win 9 or 10 games, people are really talking about it. I remember it was the 10th game. They won the 10th game in a row, and Fulham were on the back page. And it was like suddenly,
What's going
yeah, what's going on? So we go to the next game, the 11th game of the season. Suddenly you can't get a ticket to Craven Cottage, like into the
on?
hottest thing
Easy, I
going.
think, isn't it?
Yeah. But they had a great time. They had Louis Saha before Man United came for him. They had Edwin van der Sar, then Man United came for him. They had Louis Bourmorte. They had they had a really solid team. Chris Coleman, I remember, Chris Coleman was a player. I remember getting up one day and going to eat breakfast and opening the paper, and he was injured in the car accident the night before, and then that was the end of his career, and he became manager. But they had a really solid team. But the thing I was struck by is you walk to the ground, you bought your ticket, you went inside, you saw the match. You might go to a pub afterwards and get a pint, but that was it. That was the
You're
whole
gone.
experience. It was like going to the cinema. You just went in, you paid your money, you saw the thing, and you left.
Aye.
Um, so that's one thing I love about it here. It's a whole day thing. We'll meet in the parking lot before and catch up with all the guys that you've been standing with, behind the goal, singing and drinking with for 15 years. And it's really the only time you hang out. So you
Yeah.
go a couple hours before, and you cook out, and have a few drinks and a few laughs. It's a good time. And then if you win afterwards, you like to hang out a little bit longer in the parking lot. If you had a crap day, you want to get in your car and get the hell home. But
Do you have an MLS team, Shawn, or is it very much just APFC for you?
no, I've been a season ticket holder for Red Bull New York since when they used to be called the Metro Stars before Red Bull bought them and went all modern football with them.
Sure.
Yeah, I've been a season ticket holder for them for about 16 years now.
And how was the transition to Red Bull? Did most of the supporters kind of take that on board and were happy with the investment, or was there any? No, was it more like the German model over in Leipzig as well, which was pretty much the same?
Derek, tell me one football supporter who's ever been happy when random foreign ownership has come over and bought their club. Never.
And for me, the Red Bull thing, Shawn, is it's not like they're just changing the name; they're changing the colours and the brand and everything.
Yeah. Well, that was a very interesting one because the New York club in Red Bull, again, they're like Man City. They've got 5 different outfits now: Austria, the U.S., Germany, Brazil, and they have some sort of, it's like an academy almost in Ghana, in West Africa. But when they came to New York, it was a rough transition. Now, luckily, MLS wasn't nearly as popular then as it is now.
Sure.
And basically, they came in and said, "We're going to give you $100 million for this franchise at a time when you could buy an MLS franchise for about $7 million."
My goodness.
And they came in and said, "We're going to give you $100 million because we're going to name the team Red Bull and we want to name the stadium Red Bull Arena." And Don Garber, who's the commissioner of the league, he was, kind of didn't have a choice. For them at the time, the league was, not necessarily hemorrhaging money, but it certainly wasn't making any money. And he couldn't say no. He couldn't say no. And the one thing he tried to say was, you can put Red Bull as a sponsor, because at the time the league didn't allow jersey front sponsors. And he said, "You can be the sponsor of the jersey, you can be the sponsor of the stadium, but please don't change the name." And they're like, "We don't change the name, we're not doing it." So they kind of had to do it. The timing was crazy because it was 3 weeks before the season started.
Okay.
Like literally, the new kits had gone on sale the week before, and those are a very rare thing. And this is 2000. What year is this? I want to say 2006. Yeah, 2006. If you can find a 2006 Metro Stars jersey, like, whoa, It's gold because they were
Yeah,
literally only available for a week, you know?
that's brilliant. They'll be worth a fortune on eBay or so, wouldn't they?
Oh, yeah, man. They were clean. They were probably the best looking kids ever made, ironically enough. But, you know, it was a very rough transition because 3 weeks before the season, you come in and say, "Right, we're changing the name, we're changing the colors, and it's a soft drink," you know, that doesn't necessarily have the best reputation. It'd be like, I don't know, Lucozade came in and bought Dundee or something. You'd be like, "What?"
Yeah.
And name the team Dundee
Lucas,
Lucozade. You just like, "What is this?" So it was, yeah, it was rough. It was really rough. I mean, it was a good 7 or 8 years before like the hardcore fans quit whinging and moaning about it 24/7. And now I think everyone's just kind of come into this thing of acceptance. But most of us old school guys, we still refer to them as Metro. You know,
right, okay.
you don't see us wear, no one tends to buy the new gear. You can tell who's been there a long time because they're wearing like the old school Metro Stars gear, which hasn't been
Sure.
made in 15 years, but they still, were scouring eBay for things. And, anytime guys are like, "Oh, look, I've got some stuff that doesn't fit anymore," they always put it in like these fan forums so that, the other guys that are real fans can get their hands on it. So nothing goes to waste, nothing gets thrown away. The same Metro
That's
Stars
brilliant.
jersey has been passed around to probably 5 different people, before it'll ever see the garbage can.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it was, yeah,
Was
it
there
was
many people that left and never came back, Sean?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
definitely a lot. And it was it was interesting because they took over that Austrian team in Salzburg first, and that was a really rough transition. They
yeah.
basically came in, they changed the colors, they changed the name, they expelled the supporters group. You were not allowed to wear any of the old teams'
It was the
badges
purple
because
shirts, wasn't it? The purple
yeah,
shirts. I'm
yeah,
sure
yeah,
they done like a kinda similar to FC United in Manchester, they've started their own kind of Austria Salzburg team from the
yeah,
bottom league,
yeah,
so yeah,
which is
really good.
fantastic.
Yeah.
But I think they went so aggressive with the Austrian team with Salzburg that by the time they got to New York, they kind of toned it down a little. And again, luckily, you know, the team in Salzburg was the lifeblood of the community.
Yeah.
MLS team in New York City is we've got 12 other professional sports teams
Yeah.
that people think of ahead of that. New York is a very special and difficult market, because you have the New York Yankees and the New York Mets in baseball. You
Yeah.
have the Jets and Giants in
Giants.
American football. You have 3 hockey teams. You have 2 basketball teams, and now 2 MLS teams.
Yeah.
And as much as I hate to say it, basketball is a huge thing in New York. And if one of the college basketball teams is having a big year, they can sell out
Look at
Madison
that.
Square
Yeah.
Garden. So
Yeah.
it takes a lot for people to kind of get invested in soccer here. And the thing with the 2 clubs here is their stadium situations are less than ideal. I'll say the new club NYCFC, they play at Yankee Stadium, which is a baseball stadium,
I've
and
noticed that actually, yeah.
it's a terrible viewing experience because
Been
the
miles back from the park,
Your
eh? So
yeah, the dimensions of a field don't fit in there. The field is really small, but it's not the right angles. So you're
yeah.
sitting way back. They're trying to build a new stadium, but New York City's space is the ultimate commodity. So trying to get enough space to build a
Yeah, but you ain't
stadium,
gonna do that, yeah.
yeah, they're going to be looking for years. The Red Bulls, on the other hand, have a brilliant stadium. I mean, it's a gorgeous stadium, but it's on the other side of the river in New Jersey. And now I live in New Jersey. I don't care. I don't have a thing. But people who are, and I'm not from here. I moved
Yeah.
to this area when I was 23 years old. So I don't have the implicit prejudices and things.
Yeah.
But it's weird. People that live in New York, like they think the Hudson River is made of, electric eels or something. Like they're not
Don't
going to.
cross it.
No, they don't want to cross it. So they've got this gorgeous stadium that no one from New York wants to go to. And then people in New Jersey will go, but people in New Jersey are like, why is this called
New
Red Bull New
York.
York when it's in
Yeah.
New Jersey? So they've both. It's a shame because this should be the biggest, and it is. It's the biggest soccer market in America.
Yep.
It's not the biggest MLS market.
Yeah. It's
Saturday,
interesting, it's very interesting.
yeah. Oh man, you can do documentaries for days on soccer culture in New York. It's so fascinating, and you can get up on a Saturday morning any day, any time of the year and walk around Manhattan and there's pubs filled. And it does not matter what league you're into. Some people, You can go up to the Upper East Side to a place called the Parlor, and it's filled with Celtic fans watching a Scottish Cup final at 7:30 in the morning.
Yeah.
You can go up to Harlem, and you will find. Um, I watched a World Cup game there once. There's not many gas stations or any automotive things in Manhattan.
Yeah.
There's none of that. I think in Manhattan there's only like 4 gas stations, but we have
Yeah.
all these taxi cabs.
I was
So
going to
there's
say that's crazy with the amount of yellow cabs. Eh?
yeah. So there's this one place up in Harlem that's got like a gas station and like an auto body shop where the caddies go and get their tires fixed or get their oil changes or whatever. And all these like Senegalese and Ghanaian and like West African cab drivers all sit and watch football in this one
No
little
way.
bar across the street. Yeah, like you
That's
can find.
amazing.
Yeah, I always say, man, this is a bit of a side tangent, but if you can't go to the World Cup, come to New York for the World Cup because it doesn't matter what your country is. It doesn't matter what countries make the World Cup. They have people in New York and they have a bar in New York. And it's,
That's a brilliant analogy, actually. Unfortunately, Scotland never get to the World Cup regardless, so we'd maybe come over there and have to support the States or something like that.
man, I root for you guys every qualifying. I would love to see it. I would absolutely love to see it.
Yeah.
There's so many great footballers. All right, I'm gonna be that guy. There's so many great British footballers that aren't English that it's such a shame they never got a World Cup. A
Yeah.
George Best will never play in a World Cup. You know what I mean? Like them, Aiden,
Ridiculous, isn't it?
Aiden McGeady never will play in a World Cup.
Yeah.
Gareth Bale will never play in a World Cup. Like it's just such. I don't know. I've heard over the years, these various plots and plans. People saying, "Oh, we should do a united British team," but I'm just
Well,
like,
that's it. You look at. I don't think I would be for that, but we're not going
no,
to.
no one would be. It's like on paper, you're like, yeah, it would be a good idea. Just get that way some of these guys that will
Yeah,
never get the opportunity will get the opportunity. But knowing the history and the
no,
beefs and pettiness,
it's
no,
not going to work that
it's
way.
not going to work.
But like you says, there is so many players, and you've got Andy Robertson just now at Liverpool, who's just won the Champions League, and he's never. Well, I don't want to say never, but the chances of him playing in a major final is just
Yeah.
non-existent at the moment. So
I mean, really, man, think about George Best, like one of the all-time greats. Like never even remotely got a sniff. Like,
it's ridiculous.
no.
So what's the future for Asbury Park and Shawn Francis then? What's in the pipeline going forward? Obviously, it's quite a
Uh,
difficult time just now, so hard to say. What's
yeah, well, right now we're taking, we always try and keep everything rooted in culture, usually our local culture. And right now there's a global cultural moment of quarantine,
yeah,
everyone can relate to. So we just can actually come out with a new line of shirts and sweatshirts that are 2020 indoor champions.
I like them. I thought they were great.
Because right now we're all champions when it comes to being indoors right now. So we're always just looking for what's next, man. Like again, it's football is such a fertile ground. There's always something to poke fun at. The fun thing about Asbury Park is like Asbury Park Football Club is no one hates us, right? You and I can be sitting around chatting and you're a Motherwell fan or whatever, and the second I say I'm, Hearts fan or whatever team, you're like,
Sure.
we're not a real team, so we're the team for everybody. No one's
Yeah.
ever going to get in an argument with you for wearing an APFC kit. In fact, they're going, "What is that? That's crazy." And then you tell them the story. Well, it's a team that doesn't exist, but they sell merch and they have all these
Right.
celebrity endorsements. Oh, and by the way, if you go see Thrice this weekend, they're selling Thrice jerseys on their tour at the merch stand. Like it's this weird thing where you can't not love it.
Yeah.
If you're a
I
football fan, you can't not love it.
That's it, and I would like to think that I'm kind of a bit old school and a bit against the whole commercialisation of football, and I like these old stadiums that are falling apart, in Britain where the floodlights are going out and whatever else, and the bricks are wasting away. But to see this, as soon as I seen it, I was really attracted to it, and I thought that's a fantastic. Well, obviously with your background, it makes a lot of sense, but in terms of marketing, and it's really really revolutionary. It's a fantastic idea, and you seem to have hit the nail on the head and got it perfect.
Oh, it's fun, man. It's fun. It's a good time. And for me, it allows me to like try out ideas too, before I go and pitch them to an actual client who's actually going to pay me money. No one, I can assure you, no one's getting rich off of a fake football team.
and so I was going to ask you this. Sorry, it was just Thought my computer was cutting out there, but it's all good. It's still got charge in it. Yeah, I kind of thought that Asbury Park. Like, would you say that most of your supporters or most of your people that are buying the merch and things comes from the surrounding areas, or are you shipping out across the world? Are you?
Man, we're shipping across the world. I mean, like New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, this area, our home areas. Yeah, that's probably 50% of what we do, of where we ship to. But the other 50, no, I wouldn't even say that. I would probably say 30%. Then another 30% is the rest of America. And then that remaining 40% is largely Western Europe. Yeah, I send
Yeah,
something to, maybe once a month I get some weird one from Australia, but a lot of Germany, a lot of Britain, we do a lot of England. And it's funny, you'll see these spikes, when before Gaslight Anthem kind of went on hiatus, when Gaslight would go on tour, I would see these
yeah.
spikes of sales and wherever they were because someone was wearing
They want to
something
wear
on.
it to the show. Yeah,
Yeah, or someone was wearing it on stage the night
yeah.
before, and Ian's wearing a hat, or Alex is wearing a jersey or whatever. And then like the next day, I'm like, oh, I sold three jerseys in Hamburg. That's random. And then I'm looking, oh, Gaslight were there last night. you know,
That's amazing. Eh?
yeah, it's funny.
Good. Well, it's a good journey, and I wish you all the best for the future with it as well, Sean.
Thanks, appreciate it, man. We'll keep making fun. Maybe we gotta get Motherwell involved. That would actually be a good one. We haven't done anything with any Scots clubs yet.
I think you certainly should. I'll put it to the guys on the board, but I'm sure they'll be more than happy for it.
That'd be lovely.
Nice one.
Awesome. Well, thanks for
No,
the
Sean, no, thanks very much for your time. To be honest.